Hi, I'm Donna McNeil. I'm the Episcopal Missioner to Michigan State University and the Associate Rector at All Saints Episcopal Church up the road from campus. And I am delighted today to be talking with Bishop Bonnie Perry. Bishop, you have been here for a year now. What a year it's been. I can't imagine this is how you thought you'd be spending this past year.
Uh, no, and I just want to let everybody know I'm here, but I'm also here with my Australian Shepherd. So this is Tali. So she has her own Instagram page. Oh, look at you.
And this is Jake. Jake came to say hi.
Hi, Jake.
He often does when the conversation starts. And
Yeah.
Jake and Tali are friends. They've met.
Yeah.
Friends might be going a little far.
That's pushing it a little bit, as I recall.
They respected each other's space in the backyard.
Yeah, maybe. So it's been a super interesting year. People ask me, they're like, "Wow, like what's it like to be a bishop?" Because I was 29 years a priest.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, they're like, do you like it? Are you any good at it? And I was like, well, I have no idea if I would have been a decent normal bishop, but as a pandemic bishop, I'm not bad.
And yeah, I find the same to be true. As a pandemic, missioner, I'm fine. Of course, there's nothing to measure it by.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. I mean, churches, the church. I think the church has some great stuff about it. Clear. I'm a bishop. Clearly I'm bought into this, right? But
good close.
I think that the church has a number of sins, and probably not the biggest sin, but the most prevalent sin has been boring people to death. and so and we've done this for so long that the parents of the young people who go to Michigan State, they were bored.
Yeah.
Right. And so now, so maybe you get some folks who decided that they want to rebel, and the way they're going to rebel against their parents is by becoming people of faith, right? Because that'll annoy their parents. But I also think, I think I've been reading some folks lately, and this is what's been touching me. This is where I'm just going to go. There's a famous American rabbi, Abraham Joshua Heschel, and he died in 1972. So, and I've been doing some of his reading some of his works, but and he says that religion loses its relevance when it becomes dull and insipid. And he says that what religion is in its best, right? And I'm paraphrasing here, but religion in its best is how we answer, how we respond to this yearning in our souls that there's something more. And I think that's the piece I'm most interested in. Is
I agree.
How do I, as a human being, respond to that yearning? And then how do we do that? And then, like, how do other people do it? I think that's the thing I'm most interested in, Donna, is hearing people's stories about feeling like there's something more.
I agree entirely. That's exactly why I do this. And the thing I love about campus ministry is that is one of the jobs of young adults, is to do exactly that. As young adults, we also have to do things like figure out our careers and who we're going to spend our life with and, all that kind of stuff. But my hope is that the deepest yearnings of our hearts are also part of that conversation. And I find more opportunity for that conversation on campus than often, not always, but often in a parish.
Tell me a story that touched your heart.
Gets a bad rap for a whole host of reasons, and a lot of it warranted today. Um, most people don't know, but if you want to hear some real harsh criticism of the church, sit around in a room with a group of clergy. I mean, no one knows this better than we do. And yes, we bought into it and like the fun outfits, but we also know our sins as well as anybody. Um, so so a whole lot of the criticism of the church is warranted. One of those critiques is the ways in which we condemn people in all kinds of different ways, literally and figuratively, whether it's saying you have to be like this to fit in, you have to be straight, you have to be a certain socioeconomic class, um, you have to show up on this schedule. There's a great line from The Best Bang Theory, the sitcom The Best Bang Theory. No, The Big Bang Theory. Um, and the characters Sheldon and Amy are having a conversation about God, and Amy says something like, "I don't object to the concept of God, but I'm baffled by one who would take attendance." I love that line because, I mean, somewhat to what you're saying is the church has gotten to a point where, we're like school marms taking attendance, and all of that gets in the way. So what I love is when I get it. Part of my job is to be outside of that framework. I don't take attendance um, most of the time in most of my job, and I let one of my favorite things that has happened in the past year is we had sent an email out to campus with our mission statement. And our mission statement is that we are a Christian community that is intentionally anti-racist, LGBTQ affirming, caring for creation, doubting, believing, serving, and praying. We could add some more things to that, but it's got to fit on a card. Um, and that's enough to tell you what we're about, I hope. And so we sent an email out to campus that said, "That's who we are, and if you wanna hang out with us, this is where and when we'll be." And 4 people just walked in the door. A couple had emailed me before then, but they just walked in the door to have coffee with us, um, because that's what they're looking for. They're looking for a community that takes spirituality seriously. I'm not gonna pretend that we're not a Christian community. You don't have to be a Christian to come hang out with us by any means. I love dialogue and debate. So come on, it'll be fun. Um, but that's who we are. We're going to take faith seriously and wrestle with it and struggle with it and rejoice in it and all those sorts of things. But everybody's welcome. And to the degree that that's not true yet, we're going to do the work to make sure that becomes increasingly true. So part of the deal with being intentionally anti-racist is it's not. I was having this conversation yesterday. Um, that if you're watching this video, you've hopefully watched an earlier video with Val Smith talking about anti-racism. It's a verb. It's an action verb, she says. Being anti-racist isn't a label you get to put on and say, "I've done it." It's work you have to do day after day after day. And that's true, I think, for inclusion in general. Caring for creation means you actually have to care. You actually have to do something.
I,
And go ahead.
I've long said that faith is a verb,
Oh, absolutely.
right? And it's this muscle that you have to exercise,
Mhm.
and that I don't think we necessarily suddenly. I mean, some of us have had a few mountaintop experiences, and God bless us. But I think it's a muscle.
Mhm.
And that you just have to say, okay, well, let's see. Let me take one step and see if if what would it mean to say that I believe that there is something greater?
Mhm.
Oh, okay. What would it mean for me to say that I think we're not alone in this morass?
Mhm.
um, and then and then to start really exploring what's rolling around in scripture and say, well, what would it mean um, to really look at the teachings of Jesus Christ and see what that how that transformed first century Palestine.
Mhm.
um, and then to say, oh my God, these people literally did go to the ends of the earth. And friends, I'm sorry, my dog is chewing
What
right?
is she chewing?
It's a Himalayan yak cheese bone. Um,
Cool.
and these are the ones, these are awesome, friends.
Uh-huh.
Like you can go to this size, right? And a little bit more, but too much, and it's a choking hazard. But then what you do is, do you know these bones, Donna?
Uh-uh.
Then what you do is then you soak them in water and then you nuke them in the microwave and they become cheese puffs.
Wow.
So so yeah,
Cool.
first world friends or what, right? But
Yeah.
so she, so I'm hanging on to it so she doesn't like choke on it,
Oh,
and then
got it. Yeah.
when we're done, I'm gonna take it
Turn
away,
it into cheese
soak
puff.
it, and cheese puff it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wild.
Oh, I
Yeah,
always
that's
say,
new to
oh, to
me.
be a dog in North America. Oh, to
Indeed.
be a childless lesbian's dog in North America. Yeah. So so I think I'm in this really funny place of a real life human being. I have my doubts. I have my faith.
Mhm.
Um, it ebbs and flows like
Mhm.
tides, which we don't see here in the Great Lakes State. Our inland seas don't have tides, but still there's this ebb and flow. And then I realized that I am a guardian of an institution.
Yeah.
Um, and that's, to me, is really kind of funny because on some level I've always been the person in the back of the room saying what about, but on the other hand I also am kind of a company person,
Yeah.
right? I And so now I find myself leading an institution of which, I as you would say, I know the flaws,
Mhm.
but I also see the real value in what
Yeah.
a faith community can do. I served a faith community for 28 years, a church in Chicago. And the average age was 38. And I had 20-year-old, 22-year-old wardens, 22-year-old treasurers. Um, I didn't believe in young adult ministry because I was like, well, they're all grown-ups, right?
Yeah.
I started when I was 30. I'm like, of course I'll have a 22-year-old treasurer. They're
Yeah.
completely competent. I was competent at 22. Um, and to this day, the place, its average age is still 36.
Mhm.
Um, and there's a 36-year-old warden there now.
Mhm.
And it's a place that is really vibrant and active and just completely involved in the community. And it's a place where people connect and they have fun
Mhm.
and they question together and they cry together and they rage at politics together, and they laugh, um, and they change their surroundings.
Yeah, so the image of, um, a dour, staid, dark and cold and, um, ominous organ music in the background that
Well,
that
we did that when we had a haunted house in the bottom.
Oh, yeah.
We had the organist going off
Uh-huh.
on like this really creepy music
Yep,
upstairs. It was
yep.
awesome.
I did something like that. Actually, we went with a Munsters theme, but we did for Halloween on campus at University of the Pacific, and we had this big neo-Gothic chapel that we did similar with. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, church is at its best, and in lots of places, is a very different place from what we might imagine it is. Do you think that trend is gonna continue? I mean, what does the church of the next 10 to 15 years look like, particularly in the wake of COVID? I mean, we know that this is an accelerant to change.
I think our communities of faith that are deeply connected to their environment, their context,
Mhm,
are gonna, and if they're real,
mhm.
right?
Say more.
If they don't pretend to have all the answers,
Mhm,
if they are completely open with and have a forum for doubts, have a forum to say, how do we change? How do we grow? If
mhm,
there's space for that back and forth, um, and if people are able to show some motion, some be real,
mhm.
uh, then I think those places are going to grow and thrive. I
Mhm.
think that places that are anesthetized by the paralyzing nostalgia
Yep.
of what we had won't last 5 more years.
Mhm.
And that's okay.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Because I think that's kind of idolatry to worship the past.
Mhm.
Um, could we be a place? Could we be a force to do amazing things, to do transformative work? Yes, if we actually dream big enough.
Mm.
I think sometimes the church dreams too small.
Mhm.
And I think we forget about the fact that literally the people who followed Jesus walked to the ends of the earth.
Mhm.
They walked from Palestine to India,
India. Yeah.
right? These folks showed up um, Ethiopia,
Mhm.
right? They went all over,
Mhm.
um, and I think our imagination is too limited.
Mhm. I agree. I think some of that I think some of the narrowing of our imagination, um, is also a response to backlash against the church, and warranted backlash. I think a lot of folks in the church are afraid of, um, being seen as pushy, proselytizing, coercive, um, for a whole host of entirely legitimate reasons. And so I think we have turned inward.
And here's and yeah and here's my piece, and then is I want us to turn our churches inside out. I want us to stop saying we have something to offer to people, thinking that we've got a corner on the market on holiness.
Mhm.
I think we have amazing things happening in many of our congregations, but holiness exists everywhere,
Yeah.
right? And so what I want us to do is I want people
Along
to,
with all kinds of other good stuff.
yeah, and
Yep.
I want people to be talking to folks who are not, who haven't walked through our doors,
Mhm.
not to like say, "Hey, come," but to say, "Tell me about your life.
Mhm.
Tell me what's real." Like literally say, "So, how are you?" And then you stop and you actually listen.
Yeah.
And then when you have one of those moments when the hair goes up on the back of your neck and you're like, "Oh, that mattered," to say, "Wow, that mattered.
Mhm.
Thank you. You've touched me. Something's changed, I think." And then to call it what it is,
Mhm.
at least how you've experienced this. Oh, I think that was holy,
Mhm. Mhm.
and then have more
Mhm. Frame
conversation
those experiences. Yeah.
there. And my hunch is that the campus ministries are really well positioned
Mhm.
to do that.
I think so. I've always thought so. Yep.
So, I mean, I think that's where our future is.
Mhm.
Um, and and I don't think it's about finding young people to carry it on.
No.
Like, oh, please. Um, I think it's about everywhere having people name what's holy,
Mhm.
and for us as people of faith to learn from that, to
Mhm.
change, to be
Mhm.
changed by the people, not for us to think we're changing them, but for us to be changed by the new people we encounter.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's
I did my, Doctor of Ministry work on mission and how the church does mission, and my thesis and argument and then curriculum was rooted in the development of mutual relationship, and in the context of that relationship is when we can most effectively do mission, um, because when people are friends, you share stuff. You just do. You know,
yeah,
if
yeah,
we're friends
yeah.
and Hallie needs more bones and I've got bones, then, I share my dog bones or whatever else it is. That when you're actually in relationship with people, you don't have to do mission. You share stuff. You
Yeah,
share your lives, you share your material
yeah,
goods,
yeah,
you share ideas back and forth. So, the kind of encounter you're talking about, when that's rooted in truly mutual relationship, then there's a back and forth. I get to hear what's, sacred and wondrous and awe-inspiring
mhm,
and challenging and frustrating in your life,
yeah,
and vice versa.
yeah,
That becomes truly a two-way street.
yeah.
That's mutually supportive, is where we're headed.
Yeah. So I think I mean, for me, that's the basis of all of what we're doing. Um, that faith is a verb, that we have to be completely and utterly authentic to who we are. And here's the other piece too. I really feel like um, we need to like use our agency. Um, you have gifts, I have gifts.
More. Mhm,
Yeah, and like let's do something with them.
mhm,
And when you put your gifts with my gifts, we can kick ass. We can do more,
mhm,
right? And so I think to own our agency, to own the things that we can do,
mhm.
and then a part that I think lots of places forget: whimsy.
Yeah, I agree.
Whimsy. Let's play.
Yeah.
Let's have a little bit of fun. Um, and let's keep in mind that Jesus's first miracle was to keep the party going.
Mhm,
Right? He turned water into wine so because his mom didn't want the party to end.
mhm. And to save a friend from embarrassment.
Yeah.
Both of those are really cool things.
Yeah. So I think that's um, if I were going to think about the what our faith of now and going forward, those I think would probably be the ingredients.
Mhm,
Faith is this verb that you have to keep acting out.
mhm,
You have to be completely authentic to who God's creating us to be. I think we need to use our agency.
mhm.
Um, don't just sit there, friends. Do something. Uh,
Yeah.
and I think we need to, when we have that whimsy, when we don't take ourselves too seriously,
Mhm.
um, but know that what there's this great line in the Psalms, and for that Leviathan that you made for the sport of it,
Yeah.
right? For that big whale that you made just because, oh my God, that's going to scare the hell out of everybody. Oh my God, look at that creature. Oh my goodness, right? Like there's this big thing you made just for the sport of it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah. Well, speaking of water and creation, weird and wild things, you are a world-class kayaker.
yeah, I'm pretty good at it. Yeah,
How long have you been kayaking?
I've been sea kayaking for about 25 years. Um,
Why? What made you try that the first time?
I had a Sunday off from preaching, and I was working in this tiny church and preaching nonstop, and I didn't have to preach, so my Saturday was more free. And I said to my spouse Susan, I was like, "Oh, we could do something. What? Wait, maybe we should go rollerblading." She goes, "You have a really bad knee. That's the stupidest thing you've ever said. You've said a lot of stupid things." And so she said, "What about sea kayaking?" And I had tried it once and only gone in circles. But
Mhm.
we lived in Chicago. We went out on Lake Michigan. We went with this company, Northwest Passage, and 2 weeks later we bought our first boats.
Cool.
And then I realized that I grew up in Hawaii, so ages like 8 to 12, and so I
Mhm.
adore all things water.
Because you grew up in the military, right?
Yeah, my dad was a retired colonel in the Marine Corps.
Mhm.
And so I love waves. I love the ocean. I love
Mhm.
um, swimming and surfing and all of that. And I realized with sea kayaking, I could be really close to nature, which is I adore. I could use all my gifts and skills to someone who likes to teach and coach.
Mhm.
It requires your ability. It requires leadership skills. It requires weather forecasting, geeky skills, right? To like figure out what's going on. You have to read the patterns in the water and how
Uh-huh.
the water moves, and that's really interesting. There's all the camping stuff that's really interesting. There's and what I love is coaching people and saying, okay, what do you want to do? How do you want to do it? And then working them through a series of exercises where they gather more gifts and skills in being
Mhm.
able to be a decent, safe paddler. Plus, because I have friends who own companies around the world, and
Mhm.
because I have certifications, highest certifications you can get in the British system, American system. My Canadian ones are lower because I just haven't done as many of them. But I'm certified in all three systems. I can then coach or guide um, in lots of places. So Baja, Sea Kayak Baja, Mexico, which so Baja,
Yeah.
Mexico, New Zealand, Scotland,
Huh.
I go to pretty regularly.
Yeah.
Um, so
New Zealand is still on my list of places to go. I've been to the others, but haven't made it to New Zealand yet.
it's pretty beautiful.
Yeah, so I'm told. So I'm told. So, COVID has not been a great year for doing things. Have you been able to be out on the water much?
I was paddling. I went around Belle Isle in the Detroit River last weekend,
Oh, good.
and I bought a bike, and so I've been biking a lot.
Mhm.
Um, Less so now that it's been cold.
Yeah.
Hiking a lot.
Mhm.
Um, for a while, early on, I just wasn't going anywhere. I was just staying really close because definitely wanted to
Yeah.
follow all of the governor's restrictions and orders to keep the spread down. Um, but I mean, for me, I need green and blue, which
Mhm.
actually that works really well for the state because then I haven't like done an allegiance to either Michigan State or the
True.
university thereof.
True, true,
But
true.
I need the blue of water and I need the green of land and
Yeah.
I love cities. We live in Detroit proper, and I just need to be out and about. So this summer I did um, do a fairly long paddle through the on the Keweenaw Peninsula, just
Mhm.
camping up the
Mhm.
coast.
Mhm. Cool. Let's talk a little bit about the realities of COVID. Um, so there has been a lot of debate in lots of places, but certainly covered by the press, about how churches are approaching COVID and COVID restrictions and what churches ought to be doing and what churches ought to be allowed to do. Where are you on all that?
Well, I'm really clear. I mean, when I woke up in the morning on March 12th and heard that our governor had said we can't have gatherings of 50 or more, I I was on a way to a bishop's meeting, but I called my Lutheran colleague and I said, "Oh my God, I think we're going to have to shut the churches."
Mhm.
Like, oh. And then what I did is I called the bishop of Eastern and Western Michigan, the Episcopal bishop,
Mhm.
and then he called the bishop of Northern Michigan, and we all got together and um, started working as a group to decide, what would be the appropriate ways to listen, to abide by the governor's decision to try to stop the flow of the virus. I mean, I hate not being in church. I'm a geek that way.
Mhm.
Although I have to say, I do kind of enjoy going to church in my lammy jammies too. Um, but I don't ever think our private piety should infringe upon the public health.
Mm. Mhm.
And so we're not gathering in our buildings except to live stream. We're not really gathering much outside. I'm very worried about the new variant.
Yeah.
Um, and I
Good
just know
projection.
that we've got, I think, 6 more months, and it's going to be, but the only way we're going to be able to actually stop this is by hanging on,
Mhm.
limiting our interactions, continually to stay socially distant, to wear a mask when we're in public, and to wash our hands, and to get vaccinated when it's our turn.
Mhm. I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's hard. And I mean, we're Everyone, it's hard. I also think the churches have found new ways to be connected, and I think some of the Zoom calls aren't going to go away.
I agree. Yeah. Yeah.
That's
So
good.
I'm from out west. I grew up in New Mexico and I've served in California. I was in the Diocese of San Joaquin, which is the whole center part of California. I don't know how,
I
I
know
mean,
it. Yeah.
500 miles
Yeah.
maybe or more. It's a longer stretch than the whole, I think, yeah, because I can drive the length of New Mexico north south in 4 hours, and it would take 6 hours to drive the Diocese of San Joaquin at least. Um, I learned one Thanksgiving when I was gonna go visit my aunt at the southern part of what actually was the diocese and realized, "Oh, I can't do that in a day." Um, but out west, dioceses and other organizations have been doing Zoom and, FaceTime meetings and stuff long before COVID because the distances are so vast, it's a burden to try to do meetings. So, yeah, I'm pleased that this will be a technology that helps cut down on driving all over the place.
Well, I think it's going to help. I mean, it does help our carbon footprint, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It lessens that, and I think that's really, I think that's another piece that we've learned through this. So,
The other thing that we have found at All Saints, and maybe a little bit with Canterbury MSU, is that have being online creates a much lower barrier for people getting to know us.
mhm,
So you can sit in on a church service without anyone knowing you're there, and
yeah,
you can hang out for a couple of weeks, a couple of months. You can figure out if you like it. You don't have to walk into a church and worry about, are you dressed right? Because that we've made clothes such a big deal in the church. And even if you don't want to be, until you walk in, you don't know if this is a place where you can come in jeans and tennis shoes, or if you have to be wearing a tie. You can learn all those things watching a service online until you're ready to walk in person, if
yeah,
that's where you're headed. So I think that's going to be really good for us
yeah,
down the road. The pastor of my brother's church in Houston said early on, "We're going to be streaming till Jesus comes,"
yeah,
which I think is good.
yeah. No,
Yep.
no, yeah. I think a lot of this. I mean, I want to come. I want to be able to be in person, but I also
Yeah.
think we're going to maintain this because it's super important.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the in person is critical. We are creatures that, we thrive on each other's energy and touch and, all the expressions and engagement that you lose, particularly in a large Zoom room. Um, Being in person is really important,
Yep, yep,
and it's not always possible.
yeah, yep.
Cool.
But thank you.
Thank you, Bishop Perry
Yeah,
and Tally.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Thanks, Bishop.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.